One of you guys asked for a transmission video. Here you go. Got to pressure wash this guy off because it's still dirty. Brought it out of the back. So I'll get that pressure wash, bring it in here, and we're going to get rolling on it. Let's go over parts. So inside your basic transmission rebuild kit, which comes like this when you buy them from us at least, you'll have all your roller bearings in there. This is your input shaft cage bearing, 2 seals, and then all 5 of your synchros. So all that comes in there. These are the bearings that aren't included in any of those kits unless you find places that'll add them extra. It seems like more and more places are starting to get these as well. This is one bearing. This is a split half bearing on the rear of the transmission. This is one on the front where the input shaft comes in, that first gear. This one goes there, and these 3 go on your main shaft. So all of these will take care of every bearing inside of your transmission. Got the transmission on the bench. So first things we're gonna do, since I'm using my phone, I'm gonna tell you, then I'm gonna do it, and then you'll see it again. So first thing we're gonna do, we're gonna pull this factory mount off and probably throw it away because I got like 1,000 of them. Next, we're gonna pull this bolt out right here. This bolt is in part of the shift fork right here for 5th and reverse. So you're gonna wanna pull that out first, otherwise you will not be able to get this housing off. Then you unbolt the back housing. So I'm gonna do that right now, and then I'll be back. Got my back housing unbolted. So I just grouped the bolts together. So this will be rear housing, upper housing will go here, and then front cover I'll put on that side. That's how I do it. You can save your bolts however you want. This is the bolt I was talking about out of here. See that pin? That's what goes into the shift fork. So use this strike tab and just kind of tap on it with your ball peen hammer and it'll lift off. So I got mine off and it looks absolutely disgusting in here. Quick note, some of these will get stuck on this gear, and your gear here for reverse will try and come up with that housing and get stuck here. Just keep tapping on it and it'll drop this pin out. Now that I got all of that undone, I can show you that slot right there in your shift fork. That's where that pin sits. This is why you won't be able to remove it if you don't take that bolt out. Now we can lay this down and we will unbolt the top, and then we will unbolt this front cover. If you do not know how to do this throwout bearing, the easiest way to do it, unbolt your shift fork, rotate it back so you can use it like a handle, and you can push it out a little farther and get it to pop right off of there. Since I'm using my phone, let me show you what I mean with the throwout bearing. So, got my little lever here, prop this up, so the bearing's out. Push in on this side, push the fork this way. It comes right off. And when you go back on, same thing. Keep the fork shifted over, get that slot to line up like that, and then just kind of rock it and your throwout bearings back on. A lot of people have problems getting these off because of that design, but it's not that bad. While I'm here, you can watch me pull that off. No problems. So you see how these are goldish? That's how you'll know these are for the front cover. If you mess up and put the wrong bolt in though, it's gonna go through this housing and it's gonna go up against the counter shaft gear, and then your transmission's not gonna turn at all. So make sure you put the gold bolts back in there. There's those. Let me not lose any of my upper housing bolts. There we go. Top of the transmission's off. So this housing's siliconed on, so is the top. So it comes off a little difficult trying to break that silicone up. But once you do, you can just tap that guy right off of there. Once you're here, there's the main shaft. All out and nice and nasty looking. You can't see it, but I'll show you in a minute. Look at all this lovely good stuff right here. Nice and gross. So I'm gonna have a lot of cleaning to do, obviously. I will show you how to get this shaft out of here in just a minute. Yeah, so nasty case, got a whole bunch of sludge and stuff coming out of it. So what we're doing, we gotta take this bearing off, this gear off, and this gear off. And then we'll undo a snap ring up here. It's one of the little C-clips. You can see it right there. So we'll knock that guy off. Then we'll have to push the shaft back, get this bearing out, and then lift up and forward and slide the shaft out. So the nose will come up and then out. So how I do this is probably gonna be controversial. So I get my air hammer out. I'll push on the back of this gear right here, nice and flat and tight, so it's not gonna damage the gear. And use that air hammer to just pop that bearing off, and then these slide off. Side note, if you are doing this on your transmission and you see a gear like this where this edge is square and it's not a tapered shaft going down, this is a fuel injected transmission that has the different fifth gear gearing ratio. So this is one of those highly sought after ones. And I just had it chilling out back. Tight. So, got it all loose, now I gotta get that out. To get that one off, you gotta use a bearing splitter, so I'm gonna go get that and we'll knock that shaft off. So this is the bearing on the back. This was the bearing on the front. Got those out. Oh God, this stuff is gross. Slide the shaft out. Now we can clean the housings the rest of the way and then clean all that stuff off. So I'm gonna go do that and I'll be back with you in a little bit. What I'm doing next, take this C-clip off. We're gonna slide this collar off, slide this gear off. There's a synchro on the back side. So we'll replace this bearing and get this put back together and then go to the back end. Taking this main shaft apart, we're gonna take this C-clip off right here to begin with, and we're gonna start at the front. So this is the bearing for it. I have my synchro right here for it, so we're gonna take that off. Use 2 equal length screwdrivers. Get on your C-clip and just push down evenly. There's your C-clip. So you'll slide that collar off, There's your synchro. Slide the gear off. Here's your new cage bearing. Wipe out your old nasty gear oil out of there. We're gonna put a thin layer of grease on it. So this cage bearing's got something nice and slick in there so it doesn't die early. So there's a greased up gear. A little wheel bearing grease on that. Put your gear back on. I usually take these synchros and put a thin layer of grease on those as well, just to give it a little bit of something. There's your synchro. For these, this side's flat, that side goes out. These little notches are so oil can get into your bearings, so those go on the bearing side. That's an easy way to determine that with the front one, so you don't have to try and keep track of it. Then we'll put our C-clip back on. Let me get some of the grease off my hand. Take a flathead and just push straight down. These things do go flying, so be careful. Front's done, so now we're gonna move to the back. Also has a C-clip on the bearing. So you don't lose it, shove a rag under there. It'll keep it from flying off. That one. Hold that. Okay, to get this one off, you can use the 3-jaw puller to grab it and pull all this stuff off. I don't do that. These are old bearings, so I'm not worried about hurting them. So I use my air hammer, go right up against the bearing. It's a lot faster than old 3-jaw puller. Don't lose this little baby detent ball right here. That guy sits here. You have 3 of those detent balls on here. So there's one here and one on each side of this bearing. So now we can pull this guy off. I just lay these out in order. There's one synchro, there's another clip here. Same thing. Put your rag under there to catch it. Nice even pressure down. There's that one. And I just lay these out in order. These little collars don't always come off easy, so you can try grabbing it and sometimes they will slide off. Like this one, they like to grab your rag though. Here's your next washer. See a little detent ball right there. All right, for this one, you'll probably need a 3-jaw puller unless you got some of these adjustable heel bars like this. So once I get it spaced away, I do the same thing. Use my air hammer, push on this race. Put it in line. There's that one. so your main shaft's completely disassembled. You're gonna take a rag, get all this old nasty stuff off of this main shaft. All right, then you got your first gear. So we'll wipe this guy out real good. You see all this old buildup in here from the old oil and just trash that was in it. You're gonna get all that out. All right, that one's ready to go. Get a little more grease for our cage bearing. You don't need a lot, just a little bit. There's one. There's two. When you replace this synchro that goes on this, there's this little wire spring. You need to make sure you keep that. Get your new synchro, put your spring on it. Put a little bit of grease on there so it slides nice and easy. Shift collar on. Spring as well. New bearing. Almost forgot. Need your sleeve. About to have to get a new rag because this one's real dirty now. Slide your sleeve on, bearing, clean up your next gear. Let's see where those D10. Put your D10 ball in. The flat side of the washer goes down. And then you'll put your replacement bearing. Before you put that bearing on, put this half C clip on it, because if you run the full ones on it, sometimes those will end up not having enough clearance and they'll crack your housing. To remove these old ones, I just catch this notch with your screwdriver and pry it out and then work it around the bearing. Comes off real easy. This retainer goes to the back, so we'll set that guy on there. Let me grab a punch so I can drive that down. So when you're driving this down, only hit the inner race. And just work it a little on each side. Once it gets square, it should just drop down nice and easy. All right, seated. You'll put your other detent ball in. And on this side, the tapered edge of the washer goes to the bearing, just like the bottom one. So there's that. Get your next sleeve. Next gear, clean it out. This is your last big bearing. It's a bit much on the grease there. shift collar. Shallow side down. So on this one, the shallowest, you have a shallow side and a deep side. When you're installing this one, the shallow side goes towards this gear because you don't have the synchro. It doesn't need to move as far. So that one's on. Or put the next one in, install your C-clip. Next synchro. So the last bearing on these shafts are these split bearings. So I'll put a little grease in here. This helps stick it to the shaft so you don't have to worry about it falling out. And it lubricates it. Win-win. Other one on, drop your gear on. Then last detemp ball is in there. Remember, the cuts go towards the bearing. There's that. This last one doesn't have a retaining ring on it, so you'll pop that off. I think this one and this one are for the bottom shaft though. This one should be the one you need. Same thing with the other bearing. Only hit it on the inner race. Make sure it's seated. Put your last clip in. Come on, clip. All right, main shaft's done. The last thing I have to do is replace this bearing. You'll pop this clip off right here. You gotta use a press and a bearing splitter or a 3-job puller, and you can pull this one off, put your new one on, put the clip back on, and you're ready to go. All right, got it nice and clean, well as clean as these aluminum housings get. Main shaft, or well, idler shaft I should say. Probably should get that right. So one of these, you leave this collar on. That's going to be on the front. That keeps it from moving. Other one goes on the back. So I'll stand this up, put my bearing on, get my small gear, tall gear, and get that in there. This little baby one goes on the back here. So we'll take the snap ring off, put the hard 90 side towards the gear, and then just start tapping it on and letting it push all these together. Phone didn't want to stay up for that. As you can see, none of that's damaged. I know it sounds violent, but it's not. Shaft is in. Flip it over and set it on that bearing. This ring side goes on the outside, so it will set on like that and then press down. So I'm gonna put that on. Then we'll be ready to finish up the main shaft and get it put in here. It is in. Nice and flush. Make sure the tapered side on this one is facing the back so your back housing will line itself up easier. You see this gap right here? To fix that, you just hit this end with a hammer or an air hammer, whatever you're using, to scoot it back until that clip around that bearing is up against this housing. That'll make sure that your gear's aligned right. Once you do that, we'll set the main shaft in, and then we'll be ready to start putting this back together. For this guy, you see that little pin and the tang sticking out on that washer right there? Those sit right there. So you need to make sure you have those lined up, like so, and then stab it in that hole in the right spot. Alright, once you're done, installed, sitting in place, everything rolls, it's nice and tight. So we'll go in, we'll put some silicone around the top, put the top half on, install the new seal, silicone the front on, install the new output seal, and then install the rear housing, putting silicone all the way around it. The factory did not use gaskets for these. Once you're done, bolt it down, throw it back in, ready to go. Transmission will be done. Little pro tip here, this 32 millimeter 12-point socket is perfect for driving these rear output seals. So I highly recommend you do it this way, because tapping in with a hammer or punch or any of that usually is difficult to not destroy your seal.